Good morning. I'm Rebecca Horniman, and I'm joined here today with Jackie Kuang and Amos Clifford. They are with the Association of Nature and Forest Therapy Guides and Programs here in Prescott, Arizona. I'm excited to introduce Amos and Jackie. Tell us a little bit about yourselves and the association.
Yeah, so my name is Amos Clifford, and the Association of Nature and Forest Therapy Guides and Programs started in 2012. I was looking for a way to be of service in my elder years. And so I'd held a question for quite a while, what do I do for that? And I eventually settled on the necessity for people to remember that we are nature and that we're profoundly connected with it, and we need to be in relationship with other than human beings and the more than human world. And my hope for that is that as we remember those relationships and we become more skillful in them, we'll behave in ways that are more environmentally sustainable. And we care for ourselves and each other in the world more skillfully. So that was my hope. I didn't know how to do that. You know, how would I connect people with nature? And you know, I'm trained as a guide and as a psychotherapist, and I spent some of my career studying and teaching Zen, and I felt like I wanted something really simple and accessible. And so in 2012, Outside Magazine published an issue that the lead article was on this Japanese practice, Shinrin-yoku, which means forest bathing. And it really didn't describe the practice super well, but what it did do is say that there's a lot of good research that shows that this practice is beneficial for people. So I thought, okay, it described that it was usually about 3 hours in duration. It didn't go very far. There was tea involved. It relied on the senses more than, you know, the head more than. So they're not naturalist classes.
Okay.
They're classes about being very, very present in your body and aware of the place you're in. And so I liked that. I liked that it was accessible. It wouldn't require a lot of privilege or travel. So I founded the organization. Our original mission statement was to embed this practice in healthcare systems in the United States. That was our original mission, because it's embedded in healthcare to a certain extent in both Japan and Korea. We're starting to see more of that in other countries like Germany. We're seeing it somewhat in Serbia, Croatia, Montenegro. They're really embedding it in health spa experiences.
Sure.
They're really taking some leadership and doing some very creative things with that. So I actually went to the Kaiser offices in Oakland, California, and I met with some middle managers, and I said, hey, would you guys include this in your offerings? And they looked at the research I gave them, and they said, yeah, we'd consider that as soon as you have qualified guides in every market that we serve.
Okay.
So I left that meeting thinking, well, I'm going to train 1,000 guides in the United States. And but how do you train guides in this practice? That was a big question. And as I don't know if I mentioned this, but I'd had a lot of experience as a wilderness guide. I'd started guiding when I was 19, back in the 1970s, and guided for many years in the Sierra Nevada. And the groups that I worked with and the other guides I worked with, we were constantly in conversation about some big questions like, what are we doing? and why? And why does this work? And what is our theory? So we were constantly exploring big ideas about pedagogy, and I carry that with me. So I have some really big notions about what it means to be a guide, and the challenges and some of the rigor involved in that. So part of my career, I was also in education and doing a lot of educational consulting and curriculum development. So I thought, well, if I'm going to train guides, the first thing I should do is develop standards. In other words, write down very clearly what guides should know and be able to do in order to be competent and confident and safe. So I wrote standards, and then over the next couple of years, I started working with some mentees and colleagues. I started developing a practice. And we found a method that works very reliably to rapidly bring people into this kind of what I describe as a heart-to-heart relationship with nature. It's more like remembering that than it is teaching it, you know. And I hadn't been to Japan yet, so I didn't know what they do or what other people did, but we started training people. Our very first training it was international already. We had people come from other countries for that, and very soon we found ourselves being invited to teach in other countries. So
you found yourself surrounded by people that were familiar with this type of therapy.
Well, they were familiar with the concept of nature is good for us.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And they were also confronted with the challenge of how do we do that? How do we bring people into contact with nature in a way that's accessible, that makes sense, that's effective? And we had some answers for that.
Okay.
So now we've trained about 2,000 people in 65 countries. And I think we have probably about 1,000 people in the United States. Mm-hmm. Regarding Kaiser, though, I don't know how to make things like that happen, but we did have a CEO from Kaiser, a physician who was a CEO on the East Coast for Kaiser. He's a certified guide with us now. He did the training. The woman who wrote the article in Outside Magazine has completed the training. Florence Williams, she has quite a best-selling book called, I think it's called
Nature Fix.
The Nature Fix.
The Nature Fix, okay.
Yeah, and about a month or so ago, the Kaiser newsletter that they send out to their members featured forest bathing. So it's like, okay, like I said, I don't know how to make those things happen. And I wouldn't have said, like if I'd made a plan, I wouldn't have said, here are the steps it's going to happen.
Sure.
Because I don't know. But that feels like a win, you know, mm-hmm. that they're now promoting that. I don't think we don't have any kind of formal partnership or relationship with them. All our relationships are just informal and organic, but there's a lot of them, and they're all over the world now.
Well, and it sounds like you're a man who guides by example, and that's probably what you built this company around, is an example, and you're a great example of that. Jackie, you're a guide?
Yes,
is that correct?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing.
Sure. I got trained as a certified nature and forest therapy guide in 2017.
Okay.
I had no idea that's the route I was going to take. And that's a story for another time. And since 2017, I've been guiding regularly, at first in Los Angeles. That's where I lived. And then 2 years ago, I moved to Prescott. And so currently I'm guiding at the Highland Center for Natural History.
Yes.
I really enjoy it. I'm also the general manager. And so I just feel really grateful to be promoting this work. That's very impactful to really help people, I say, come to their senses, to really reset from a busy, worrying, thinking, ruminating mind into a sensing body and a feeling heart. And that alone, I think it is very creates a positive impact.
Sure.
Especially now, people have a lot of different stresses.
Yes,
Yeah.
that is true. And are you finding that the surrounding areas in Prescott lend itself to your work?
Absolutely. The Ponderosa pine forest. I think we have the Prescott National Forest, which covers a lot of it, and also different landscapes like the lakes, right? Watson Lake, the Granite Dells. It's just beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah, I love it here.
We are surrounded by a lot of natural beauty and a lot of accessibility to nature.
Yes.
So it is a pretty special place to live here in Prescott, in the Prescott area, and be surrounded by nature. But also, like you said, your company is international, and right away was people from all over the world were drawn to this because they either identified with it or had some interest with it.
And when we started, we were the only training organization outside of Japan and Korea. So it had been going pretty well in Japan and Korea for a couple decades, but hadn't quite made it out of that. And since then, there's a lot of other training organizations that have sprung up. I was told recently that there's something like 45 just in Germany alone.
Wow.
Yeah, and they don't train necessarily in the same method that we do. We call our approach relational forest therapy because it's about building relationships. Most other organizations base their work on the initial focus of the Japanese research, which was on stress reduction, supporting immune functioning. So it's more of a public health approach, I would say.
Okay.
So this field has a very strong leaning towards public health, and we're kind of an outlier on that. We say, yeah, we get all those benefits for sure, but it's not like when I observe people who I guide or who are guided by others, they're not saying at the end of the walk, yeah, my heart rate variability improved, or usually what happens is they have some kind of insight or recollection or remembering of something that they will often describe as very profound and significant. And I've seen people after even a single walk go and make major changes in their life. And the changes weren't something that they thought up on the walk.
Right.
It was reconnecting with what's always been important to them.
And finding that purpose.
Yeah. So we differentiate when we train in the way of the guide, we differentiate between what we call the tamed world and there are different ways to say it, but I would say that the wild world or wilderness. And the tamed world is really important because it's what makes culture and society and podcasts and all that. It's what makes it possible. But it has a shadow side. And the shadow side is that it often suppresses our inner knowing of who we are born to be and makes it difficult for us to pursue those things. And so a lot of the way of the guide is about bringing people into experiences through the body, because all this knowing exists in our body, especially in the heart region. So bringing people into those experiences where they'll have those memories, right? Say, yeah, this is who I am. And it's an interesting thing with training guides. Many trainees have told me that when they went to our website and they read about what we mean by being a guide, they said, that's the word for who I've always known I've been, and I didn't know it.
Sure, they identify with it immediately.
And so that's an example of stepping out of the taming or beyond the taming. And, what I say the outcome of effective guiding is that our range of freedom increases. Maybe not a lot, but a little bit. And as we get more freedom, we have more opportunity to connect with the deepest truth of who we are, who we're born to be, how we are born to serve, and maybe that freedom will encompass the courage to take steps in that direction. So that's more what the way we train people in the practice is more oriented to that.
So when somebody is interested and does have the courage to ask about becoming a guide, what is the process? What do they go through to? What is the first step? Is there an application process to become a guide?
Yes. So, when they go on our website, natureandforesttherapy.earth.
Okay. Natureandforesttherapy.earth.
Okay.
Or just ANFT.earth.
Yeah, that's probably easier to type for sure.
And we can put those up on the screen as well.
Yeah. So there's an application process. In the office, we have an admissions coordinator that will actually review each application and then start to accept or not, and then they go through like a 6 months process. And we used to do like a 1 week intensive and then followed by a mentor to practicum. The pandemic made us really having to pivot. And currently the training model, we call it a hybrid model, where people learn the content and the concept, and then practice them in their yard, parks, in their region, in nature. And so it's very kind of at a pace that works.
Sure.
Then they come back, and then we hold a 4-day in-person immersion, and that completes like the 2 parts of the certification process.
Okay.
The 6 months, online via Zoom, and
in independent practice.
Practice.
Sure.
Yeah. And then ending that with the 4-day.
We had one of those immersions here in Prescott not that long ago.
Last October.
The most recent ones have been, I think, in Portugal, Switzerland, Czech Republic.
Yes.
Was there one in Canada too recently?
Yes,
and Costa Rica?
And Costa Rica was in February.
And one in the Rocky Mountains.
Yes.
Just recently,
So,
in Colorado.
Yeah, so this year, because, people are more willing to travel and everything, I think we have... we're going to have close to 20 immersions this year.
20 immersions.
20 immersions.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. So yes, you are definitely, part of the world citizenship of this is one practice that everybody can join. No matter where you live.
Yeah. People can deepen into their practice. Also, there's this craving of, socializing with each other, with like-minded people, and fall in love. Really, over and over again with the natural world. And then when we are in that state, who wants to leave trash around, right? So there's a natural desire to protect what we love.
Sure, preserve it.
We also do professional development beyond the training, and a lot of workshops. I speak at conferences a lot, and I'll be doing a 5-day workshop at Hollyhock Center up on Cortez Island in August. And usually what those are is they're a more in-depth exploration of some aspect of the curriculum.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, dives deep into one section.
And so those are suitable for either guys who have been trained, guys in training, or people who are thinking about going that direction and just want to kind of, like learn it firsthand to see if it's a good fit for them.
Sure, that's a nice option to maybe stick a toe in and see if this is a good fit. Well, we are very honored to have you not only locally here in Prescott with your headquarters here, but participating in the upcoming Outdoor Summit that happens in September.
We are very excited.
3-day summit, September 16th, 17th, and 18th, and you will have a experience for guests to come and maybe take part in what you're doing.
Yes.
What can we expect from that experience?
I think we're going to have a booth.
Sure.
And then we'll have some information, including Amos's book, available. And we're also thinking of just even just in the booth gathering, nature objects, and to, for lack of a better word, give a sampler, mini experience there when people come to stop by. And we may offer a off-site excursion, like a forest bathing experience that people can come
and enjoy.
Yeah.
I know, and there's still time to plan. We're early here in the summer. There's still time to plan for September, but it's definitely something to look forward to stop by your experience and your booth there. Let's talk a little bit about, your plans and your vision for the future, environmentally, socially, as you continue to succeed with your business.
Well, one of the visions that we have is that more and more people will become aware of their role and participation in the more than human world. And also, for me, one of the parts that's really important is that we'll start recognizing the importance of the intelligence that lives in our hearts and start developing the skills to balance that intelligence with the one our culture emphasizes the most, which is the cognitive, brain-oriented intelligence. So I didn't mention this earlier, but one of the outcomes of training to be a guide and then of practicing this forest therapy is that the heart intelligence and the capacity of the heart to be really aware steadily opens up spontaneously. So we don't necessarily teach specific practices like now focus on your heart or anything like that. Mm-hmm. But what happens is if you're very aware of your sensory experience and of your body, and if you're able to hold all of that kind of simultaneously, like if you're aware right now in this moment of the sensations on your skin, of what's coming through your ears, your eyes, your nose, and your mouth, and you're also aware of just the weight of your body, the presence of it, and if you can hold all that together, something naturally happens right here. And what happens here is an opening that is a very important awakening. And so that's, for me, is a part of the vision. Another part of the vision is that as we remember our connection and our participation in nature and our hearts open, that we will begin to accept the sentience of other than human beings. And in order to do that, we can experience that directly in a form of communication with them. Communication isn't like I speak to a tree and the tree speaks back to me. Like I feel into the tree, and then the tree makes an impression on me through a sense we call the imaginal sense. And when I become skillful at that, I can have dialogues with trees and streams and stones and birds and so on, but they're not like this.
No.
So that's one of the things that's really important, is that you learn that slowly and experientially. And that's why this practice is important. Then I think another part of our vision is that this practice will become more incorporated in the institutions that comprise the tamed world. So healthcare, education, possibly some in politics, possibly in family. We have some guides who specialize in working with families. It's very powerful.
It is very powerful.
It's very powerful with couples too, because a lot of times I've noticed this when I've guided. If I have couples along, it's kind of like they remember who each other are and the way they communicated way back when they met, and that just happens naturally. We don't we don't, what would I say, manipulate that or structure it. We just know that this practice allows a spontaneous emergence of whatever positive thing is needed by the people who are coming. So we don't, like one of the things I train guides is, don't go out with a specific outcome in mind. You might read the research, and the research will say, well, people experience awe when they're in nature. Maybe, but that's not our business. That's between them and the forest, what they experience. They may experience boredom. If that's what they experience, I'm saying that's what they need to experience.
Yeah.
They may experience, this is actually pretty common, grief. People will, sometimes they'll come back from an exchange with a tree and they'll be crying and they'll be in this big grief. And
it's a place to be still and be thoughtful.
And my opinion is that's wonderful. If you contact your grief, it's there all the time. And not only that, I have the intuition that when we grieve in that way, we're not just doing our own work, we're doing work for the world, for all of humanity. We're doing something that's very positive. So I think that's another part of a vision I have for the future. It's maybe more like a wild hope than a vision, is that some of these core concepts in the way of the guide will get infused into education, because it's very counter to the way education is done now. And maybe get infused into things like management strategies, maybe into parenting. And we hear from those who we train that the way of the guide transforms whatever they're doing in life. In fact, I was in Portugal recently speaking at a conference, and this young woman came up to me and gave me a big old hug, and she was so happy to meet me. And I said, well, why? And she said she read my book and it had transformed her work. I said, well, what work do you do? I'm a psychiatrist, what she said. And it completely changed my understanding of how to do psychiatry. It's like, well, that's not a part of my vision, I wouldn't say, but it's very interesting to me to hear that. And if I had more time with her, I would have wanted to sit down and explore that, tell me more. And pretty soon there were 4 of them there, 4 young women who were psychotherapists, so they were all in some kind of helping, and they all were saying the same thing, that they felt that this had transformed how they do their work. And I'm happy to hear that. I'm hopeful that the transformation is a good thing, because there's also, transformations that are not necessarily positive. But they all felt like it was very positive.
Well, I think that, what you said earlier definitely is something that you're speaking about now, your work and putting it out there for the world, and how people are receiving it. Even if it's not your vision, they found something in it. So, it's not our business to know how it touched them or how they're using it.
Fundamental in the way of the guide is that if I'm a guide, I have to let go and let them find. And I'm finding that now as a founder, like I've missed, we have a monthly call, a Zoom call, where all the trainers come together. And I missed one this week. And our training director, who lives down in Costa Rica, she recorded the Zoom meeting and put it up on the web. And so I watched the whole thing. And I was watching it, I had this sad feeling like, wow, I'm not needed anymore. Because everything that they're dealing with, the challenges that they identify and so on, as a group, they have brilliant solutions. And the solutions may not be the same ones that I would come up with, but they're theirs.
Sure.
And they're working with them, and it's working well. And so I had this combination of sadness, from I'm close to retirement, and I have to figure out a different way to find meaning in my life. But so there's a sadness around that, and also a feeling of happiness, I guess, around the accomplishment that there's a group of people who are living this way of the guide and supporting each other on that, and training people all over the world.
It must make you feel so proud and happy to know that that work will be continued.
It does. But I have to also say that I don't feel like it's my accomplishment, because I feel like in starting this, I was honoring, like, there's a process that we call earth dreaming, and the more connected you are with nature, the more likely you are to be aware of this. But it's like there's a voice that's bigger than humanity that's speaking into us and offering us guidance. So one way to say that is that's the earth itself that we're born out of, that we're a part of, that has some notion of what is needed now and is nudging each of us in to do our part. I feel another way to say that, besides earth dreaming, is to say it's a commission from heaven. Like, who are we born to be in a more almost cosmic sense? Well, my feeling is that if we can each align ourselves with who we are born to be, then the work kind of gets done around us.
Right. And you'll never really retire, will you?
Well, I don't think so, but I've recently shifted my focus formally from being a guide and teaching the way of the guide. I've become really curious over the last couple of years over the way of the guided. What does it mean to be guided? And so I've formally taken up the path of being a pilgrim, one who is guided. And I don't know quite what that means. But I think some of the medical challenges I've had recently that have partially disabled me have thrust me into a new way of being. And I don't really feel like guiding much anymore. I feel like wandering around, and seeing what comes my way. So that's probably what my retirement's going to look like. I think I'll show up at immersions and probably keep speaking at conferences and getting seminars and things, but it's not a full-time thing anymore.
Well, we're definitely lucky to have you both here in Prescott and being part of the summit coming up. That just gives access to people who, will listen to our conversation today and be more curious. And again, find us, in person at the summit here in Prescott Valley coming up in September, but also knowing that you're local and it's so accessible to everyone. I think that's so much a part of what this conversation is going to give to people. If they have any kind of curiosity and have more questions, it's so nice to know that that's, that you're available to answer those questions.
And we are grateful for the opportunity. Yeah.
We are too. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with our listening audience about the interview today, or something that you'd like them to take with them after listening to this? Is there some wisdom that you can embark?
I have something, but I wonder what you'd like to say.
I just want to say, come on, find us at the summit.
Yeah, just join your guide and be guided or learn to guide.
Yeah.
And Amos.
Yeah, my core message to everyone is that you, the person who you are born to be, you are needed now. And you have an opportunity to discover and embody the truth of who you are. And if you do that, you will contribute to the world in beautiful and powerful ways. And that's at the core of how I see what my work is about, the whole work of a guide. Yeah.
That's a very powerful and impactful message. And I'm grateful for your time and to know you both.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you.
Yeah,
for
thank you.
this opportunity.